wasn't live. So Facebook was the only one that was live. That's awesome. Hey, what's up, YouTube? So I'm a few minutes late. I've been going for 15 minutes and didn't realize that my Facebook live stream failed to load from OBS. So let's get you caught up. I guess we're going to have to go back in time. Sorry to my Facebook viewers, all of one of you, Rich. So let's talk about why we're all here. White PC builds, right? Fireworks. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Woo! Pretty lights, right? In a beautiful case. So this is the Lian Li Lancool II. It is a full ATX PC case. It's got RGB front. It's got pretty decent airflow mesh sides. And its party trick is, instead of having a bunch of thumb screws or Phillips head, hex head screws that you're going to lose, it's got magnets instead. So if you want to open up this bottom panel down here, or to get to the side panel, it's all attached by magnets, and they just clip right back in place there, even on the back side. And I'm going to show you on the other chassis that I have, the other case that we're going to build in today. It's got magnetic filtration. It will accommodate liquid cooling up to 360 millimeters on the front, and a radiator, and a 280 millimeter radiator on the top. It's a beautiful case to look at in person, and yeah, it's got all different kinds of color modes. You can cycle through the solid colors, you know, red, orange. I already made the one joke about, you know, learning to wash our hands. Now we're going to do colors. I guess I'll do it again. So I like to put it on. That's the closest I can get it to white to match this Gamex 400 cooler by Deepcool. So trying to build an all-white interior PC. Obviously, this PC's interior actually comes black, but we're going to be using a Radeon RX 5700 by Powercolor that I have custom painted white. I think came out pretty good, and this again gets me on my soapbox of why are there so few white GPUs on the market today. To my knowledge, the only one that's available, the only series that's even available in the US is produced by a company called Gigabyte. They make 3, the RX, or the RTX, good Lord, I can't talk, RTX 2060, 2070, and 2080 Super Editions come in a white WindForce version. And I think they look all right. They look a little gamery to me, a little, you know, too gamer fanboy. This comes to you black satin, really understated. There's no LEDs, no RGBs or anything like that. And once it's painted up, you know, in a nice flat white with this chrome trim ring and these black fans, I really think it looks outstanding. I wish this case, this case might be a little too narrow to put GPU upright with a standoff, with a PCIe standoff, but it would look really good set up that way. I wish I looked around for some. I think these are 92 millimeter fans. I looked around for some white 92 millimeter fans and just couldn't find any that I could get in a timely manner. I wanted to do this video like 3 weeks ago, but I've had other projects get in the way of it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build in the Lian Li Lancool II, and we're going to use an MSI Mortar Titanium motherboard, a Deepcool Gamex 400 CPU cooler that's chilling a Ryzen 5 1600 AF. You will recognize that setup there from my other videos where I've used it to compare against the 980X from 10 years ago. And then we're going to use an EVGA 500BQ semi-modular power supply, and we're going to use a 200 and 40 GB SSD just to get it going. I'm going to put a 3 terabyte hard drive in it later for storage, and almost lost my screwdriver. And we're going to use these white cable extensions to keep everything nice and clean, right? As always, I've got my trusty and rusty, it's not that rusty, iFixit kit. This is an essential kit if you're going to really get into DIY on electronics, computers in general, electronics specifically, computers specifically. It's got a nice little magnetic loaded screwdriver in there. It's a very good thing to have. Also, my other tool that I just put down here. So this is one of my favorite PC tools of all time, and it came in a fan cooler. I bought a Noctua NDH, I think it's a 15 something. It's a big tower cooler, and you need a super long, super skinny screwdriver to get to the screws at the base of it when you're installing it. So they give you one, and I know it looks super plain Jane, but it is very handy. It's not magnetic. If it was magnetic, it would be absolute world beater as far as the ability to get down into narrow crevices, and it's because it's got this L shape here, you can get a lot of torque to break loose stuff that's already installed, or to get enough torque on something that to make sure it's seated. So okay, enough blathering on about what we're going to build today. I'm going to power this guy down now and put it over to the side. I'm going to bring the new Lancool case up onto the table, and we're going to build a PC in the Lian Li Lancool II. Just as a disclaimer, so none of this is sponsored. No company sent me any of their gear to say nice things about it. I sell computers locally on the local economy, and I'm going to sell both of these locally on the local economy after this video airs. I'm going to make a couple more videos because this computer has an i3 9100F, and this computer is going, and the new computer that we're going to build today is going to have a Ryzen 5 1600AF, and I want it to go head to head in identical builds. They're going to have the same brand and style of GPU, the same brand and style of motherboard, the same brand and style of RAM, and the same brand and style of power supply in the same case. It's basically pound for pound identical. The only change is going to be the CPU, right? And I want to make an additional follow-on video of how these two systems compare, and should you go with a $75 Intel CPU or an $85 AMD CPU. I feel like they're like within punching distance of each other price-wise, spinning distance. Occasionally, that CPU actually jumps up to like $100+ when they run out of stock on Amazon. This guy hovers right around 75, 78, 79 some days, depending on stock. But that you'll see, so you're going to see these two systems re-emerge in a follow-on video. But today, well, I already have the i3 system built, and we're going to finish the completion of the Ryzen 5 system now that I'm done using it to compare to the 10-year-old 980X. So let's go ahead and power this guy down. Power off. Unplug. Second time I've done this. Sorry, Facebook, if this is a little bit repetitive. I didn't know YouTube had frozen on me. OBS told me that I was streaming, but YouTube said no way, Jose. Even though I was looking at myself on the YouTube window as well. All right, so this is the second Lian Li that I'm going to build, and I want to show you the back panel because this is also like the other party trick that this computer does. It's got most computers' back panels are a solid sheet of metal. Actually, most computers have solid sheets of metals on both sides. Gaming computers typically nowadays have either a plastic or a tempered glass side panel so you can see the internals, but not very many have a tempered glass back panel, look at that down there, making me nervous, that you can see through. And so it's got the magnetic attachment on both sides, basically the exact same kind of gull wing configuration on both sides there. And then the other really nice feature about this, if you've ever built a computer, you know that this back panel is usually a shambles of cables that you had no idea how to manage, right? They give you, they show you a thumb screw, but what they don't tell you is that they put it in with a pneumatic screwdriver. Okay, so it has these very nice, very helpful, and they make for a super clean looking build. These cable management cover panels. These are pretty, for computer chassis parts, these are like built like tanks, basically. It has two of them for your cable management channel. So once this is all buttoned up, and I guess I could have showed you on the other build, but basically the only thing you can see on the other build is the power cable that does the 24 pin to the motherboard and the 8 pin to the motherboard, and all the other power cables are hidden by these two cable management channel panels. So once you take those and get those out of the way, then you can see the full extent of the chassis. Here you've got a cable routing channel here that's totally, it has this this cutout that's on the other side that covers your cable access there, and then you've got your front I/O here. Now this is kind of a detracting point for this cable when we're talking about the I/O panel, right? The panel that you're looking at, where your power button is and your USB ports and whatnot. I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess in order to keep this below $100, I guess they just absolutely had to cut this feature out. I'm not sure. You know, they have economies of scale in the manufacturing base in Asia, to where I don't understand why this one feature couldn't have been included for the $100 price tag. But maybe the margin on these is just so low that they couldn't include it. I'll try to close this up here and turn it just a little bit. So here on the top I/O panel, you have two buttons that obviously used to be USB 2.0 that have been repurposed for your color and mode for the front panel lights. You have a power and reset button. You have one 3.5mm jack that serves as microphone and headphone out, two USB 3.0s, and then an empty socket where you could put a USB-C. You can go on the internet and purchase a USB-C upgrade kit directly from Lian Li to give you that USB-C port there. And USB-C is kind of like it's the next plug that everything is going to have. Most brand new Android phones use USB-C plugs, and a lot of newer consumer electronics are going to be on USB-C. That's the way of the future. USB 2.0, this doesn't even have it on the front I/O. So 2.0 is going away. 3.0 is the mainstay now, and this is upgradable to make you future-proof for USB-C connections. I just don't understand why they didn't include it in the base price of the case. That would have been the absolute icing on the cake, so they say. And then to get our screw kit pack out, it's got to come out the other side here. So this is the drive sled tray. It's pretty nice for the 3.5-inch drives. It's got a nice latching mechanism. It makes it very easy to mount and install your drives. I say that as I struggle to get it back into the slot. It's because I'm in the dark on this side. I say that because I was trying to put it in the wrong freaking slot. Okay, so that's mounted in. Here's your screws and your mounting hardware for like motherboard and everything. You got some cable ties. It comes with the extended screws to mount radiators, which is nice. You get that on nicer computer chassis if they know you're going to try to do water cooling. And it's got the grommets to mount our SSD hard drive. Oh, SSD. So you got 3.5 inch bays here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 slots or mounting sleds for SSDs, 2.5 inch solid state. Or you could, I mean, you could put a 2.5 inch laptop drive in there. I'm not sure why you would, but you could if you just needed to. If you needed to, I don't know, get some files off of a laptop SSD that had corrupted, and you could put it in here, and you could mount it if you needed to. And I guess you could just eventually keep it for extra storage, backup storage. Yeah, I like that it comes with the long screws for water cooling. All right, so let's get these side panels out of the way and put our hardware kit over here. We're not going to need the GPU, even though it's beautiful to behold, for a while here. And okay. Now, the first thing that I like to do, all my builds, I like to really make sure that I get the cable management down, right? So the I/O cabling is usually some of the most unruly. So this comes with your USB 3.0 connector for your motherboard that feeds these top two. It's got to be connected to the motherboard. That feeds these top two USB ports. You've got the connectors for your power switches, reset switch, and the power LEDs that connect to your motherboard. You know, when you push this button up here, the power button, that's got to send a signal all the way down to the motherboard. So this is usually a pretty long and somewhat unruly cable. This is usually the worst though. This USB 3.0, they're super thick and hard to bend, and don't really want to go where you tell them to, right? And then you've got a couple of options when it comes to how you want to manage the colors, right? So our MSI, as nice as that motherboard is, it has a RGB control header on it for plug-in, but it's the wrong style. They don't not compatible. You can't use MSI's software, unfortunately, to control this RGB, because this uses a 3-pin and MSI requires a 4-pin. So they give you SATA power to go ahead and power that up for the front RGBs, as well as, oh no, not the fan. And then so this case comes pre-installed with a exhaust fan on top, an exhaust fan on rear, and one exhaust or intake fan on the front. And that brings us to another build note. It's always best to build on the chassis with as few parts connected to it as possible. So I'm going to grab on the front here, actually the top, and give a solid yank to the front panel. The front panel's pretty cool. Yeah, let's talk about this. So I did the pre-order on these. Forgot this was even going to be in here. So I did the pre-order for these last year actually, and if you did the pre-order, you got this silliness. Honestly, I think this is kind of a gimmick. If you can hear that, that's my dog going nuts upstairs because I think our Thai food is here. This is a hot swap hard drive array. So what you can do is, if you know, because this has these like what they call hot swap bays, you know, they all you got to do is just you grab it, you pull this latch, and the hard drive and the bay come out together, and they're butted up against this this interface. It's just a card that mounts here in the back, right? It mounts there, and then you plug in SATA power and then you have SATA connectors. It doesn't really do much to cut down. You still need 3 SATA connectors. I guess you only need 2 SATA power cables to run 3 drives with that. So I guess that's nice. You get 1 less connector if you're going to populate all 3 hard drive bays. I don't know very many people who need that as a use case. I guess if you are like a content creator like I want to be, you might want 3 drives in RAID for redundancy to make sure your data stays safe. You know, if one hard drive fails, you got a second one or a third one that's capable of being a backup. So yeah, that was interesting. That was on the front panel there. Comes with just like their installation kit for this, for the hot swap panel, and I think, yeah, that's the screws for the hot swap panel, and some SATA cables. That's nice. I mean, our motherboard, I guess SATA for this RAID array, but they only give you 2 SATA cables, but you need 3 if you're going to populate the entire drive bay. Oh well. Interesting little gimmick from Lian Li. I'm not really sure that that's a true selling point of the case. And it definitely wasn't a good enough reason to pre-order one. The reason I pre-ordered one is because they were getting rave reviews and I feared they were all going to sell out, which they did. This is a very hard case to find now, it seems like. So this is the front panel. It detaches completely. This is another little party trick that it does. This is going to be more common, hopefully, going forward. It has this little panel here, contact panel, so the lights that you see on the front grill, they're behind these little air filters here, these mesh air filters. That's nice. It has filtered air, so the dust doesn't build up inside your PC and kill it with it being unable to get rid of the heat in a timely manner. But all the electricity for those LEDs and the mode control and everything is passed through these little contact panels from these little gold standoffs here in the front. The standoffs, they're spring loaded. You can push them in here and they touch up against these panels, and when you send your input through the 2 color mode buttons on the top, that's how it knows whether you want green or red, or you want the mode to be circus lights, or what have you. Okay, get a tasty sip of my libation there. Like I said, it's got a filtered intake. So this is a magnetic panel, it goes on top. It covers this rather large whole section here on the top that allows for ventilation. You can put, it has 1 fan installed there on top, or you can remove that, put a large what they call an all-in-one liquid cooler, up to 280 millimeter size liquid cooler up there to keep your CPU nice and frosty. I'm going to put that all together, all to the side. And again, I like to have as few components attached to the PC as possible. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these tempered glass side panels off, because what I don't want to do on YouTube Live is break a tempered glass side panel. So that you just lift up on that and it slides right off the hinge, just like if you like Pirates of the Caribbean, the references half pin barrel hinges. I'll find a good, put these on the funky couch back here, groovy couch. Take both of these off. Again, just slide it, just give it a little tap. Up, there we go. And they both come off, and that way you can build on this thing with no danger of scratching or shattering your fancy tempered glass cages, right? Okay, let's see. I got most of the way through talking about the I/O. USB 3.0, it's big, it's unruly, kind of like a Drosty. And then got how we're gonna supply power to the the pretty lights through the SATA port here, so we're going to need both of these for sure. This is just if you want to use a remote control, you can do that also, but this cable right here is just superfluous. And then, so we don't need this cable either, because this is the 3-pin cable that's not compatible with our motherboard. So I'm going to tuck that away also for now. And then we have our audio. This supplies the signal from the motherboard to the audio jack. And we have our control for the J panel, what they call the J panel on your motherboard. It's the power reset, hard drive lights, all of that, right? Okay. So the first thing that I like to do is to install the power supply. So this is the EVGA 500 watt BQ. It's bronze rated, semi-modular, and with a CPU that's as efficient as the Ryzen 5 1600AF is, and the 5700 XT really only needs about 220 watts at full chat. This is never really going to be pushed past 350 for the entire system as configured. So I went with the 500 watt. I'm going to put that in upside down. So what you want is you want the fan down so it can suck air from the bottom. You don't want it. You don't typically, especially the way this case comes configured with already 2 exhaust fans, you don't need a 3rd exhaust fan. You're going to wind up with what they call a negative pressure situation, where you're sucking air into the case as opposed to blowing air into the case, and you wind up with dust being built up in weird cracks and crevices. All right, let me get around to the other side here. I feel like I'm creeping up with my back to the camera. Here we go. So only problem, okay, there we go. So we line up the holes here and get our power supply all buttoned up. And some of this is going to be a little bit tedious, guys. I totally understand if you don't stick with the entire live stream. It's going to be a bit of me just putting screws in holes here, but it's just the way building a computer actually is. So if you want to see what it's like to actually build a computer from scratch in a beautiful chassis like the Lian Li Lancool II, then you're just going to have to bear with me. And of course, you know, the second screw I try to put into this thing, it's like, big on, foul demon. Alright, that one wants to go. Go your home. I'm happy to more reference there if you're old like me. And one more screw here. Sometimes these power supply hole threads are not the finest machining job in the world, you know. That's just kind of the way it is on mass produced. This is not, you know, a 500 BQ is not the top of the line. I have to give it the beans here with the big boy. Top of the line, just absolutely, you know, every crevice and surface of the CPU is going to be perfectly machined. It's not a Bugatti. It's, you know, they make 1 million of these a day. That's an overstatement. They don't really make 1 million of them a day, but they make a lot of these, and they ship a lot of them all around the world, right? All right, so there's our power supply installed, and that gives us a good idea of, you know, how we're going to do our cable management. So I build from the outset. That's my mantra, is to just really try to work cable management from the very first thing I put into the computer, so that I don't wind up having a build that is just absolutely a nightmare. I'm constantly replugging and unplugging every single thing on the PC, you know, in order to try to figure out how I can get my cables to not look like a hot mess, right? So I start with the power supply because that's the biggest source of hot mess. All right, so SATA, PCIe power. We don't need Molex for this, so we're only going to need those two cables to connect to the power supply. And I know some of you are going to think, well, Mike, you should have just put those in there. You should have plugged those in before you installed that. And you know what? You're right. But I didn't, so I'm going to have to go with it the way it is. So here I am, trying to be the expert on assembling computers and making a day one rookie mistake on how to install a power supply, but that's okay. I've been doing this a while. My fingers have kind of gotten a memory of their own about how to find the correct slot for these cables. And now the VGA, thankfully, is closest to the front. Okay, so this is all the cabling that we're going to need, right? But in order to keep our clean aesthetic on the build, we can't do all white because the case is already, already has black on the interior chassis. But we're trying to do as much white as we possibly can. And in the case of the motherboard, it's really more like silver. So we've got our white cable extensions. First one being the motherboard, CPU power, ATX power extension. So plug that one in. And then we need 24-pin power extension, and we'll plug that one in. Now, what I'm not showing you is putting in all the wire looms. So this comes with a set of plastic looms so that these look perfectly groomed and straight and very aesthetically pleasing once they're in place and bent, and they don't look like kind of like a hot mess like they do right now. I didn't pre-apply these before the live stream, and I'm not going to apply them during the live stream. I'll go back afterward and tidy up the wire looms, but it does make, it's not like the absolute most game-breaking change, but it is a detail that shouldn't be overlooked, right? So that's the 24-pin power, and then we're going to do 8 and 6-pin power to the GPU. Some of you are probably going to be out there being like, Mike, you're putting all the load of that poor power supply onto one rail. You're damn right I am. I am doing that. That's fine. This power supply can handle it. I've already validated that. I've run this setup, this same motherboard setup on a 500 watt power supply, ran the OCCT power supply stress test for several hours. Not a hiccup. So as long as this power supply isn't DOA from the factory, then we're going to be good, right? Okay. So we've got all our cabling right here ready to go, and I'm going to shut our side doors here. It's going to be easier said than done on the back side. There we go. I'm going to lay it over. And I don't really have a good way to show you guys I don't have an overhead camera, which would be optimal, right, for you to see how to install the motherboard. But I will say, commenting on the Lian Li, that of the recently released cases that I have built in, recently, that's a lot of recently, that's like an Austin Powers moment there, recently, or Department of Redundancy department. Of the newer cases, newer case models that I have built in, this one is definitely, it's a breeze. Wow, it really is. Just a very nice, easy to build in, lots of room. I never felt constrained. So we built my son a really nice gaming rig in iBuy PC. It's actually made by NZXT, if you know that. An iBuy PC snowblind element, and I featured that on one of my on my previous videos about, you know, my rant about not being able to find a white GPU. So that case, in juxtaposition to the Lian Li Lancool II, is a nightmare to build in. It is absolutely cramped. You can't detach the, it has the same swing open tempered glass front panel, but because that tempered glass is also an LCD screen, and it has wires going in through an interface, and it functions as like almost a second monitor for your computer, you can't detach it. And it is nerve-wracking, to say the least, to build in, because you are constantly afraid that you're going to do something dumb and wind up shattering not only a tempered glass side panel, which could probably be replaced on this. You could probably get in touch with Lancool USA, and they could allow you to order a tempered glass side panel to replace one if you did break one while you were building your PC. But on the snowblind element, that's a LCD monitor screen, as well as your side panel for your case. So even if you could order one from iBuyPower, which I'm not 100% sure that you can, it would be prohibitively expensive probably, and also it would be very hard to install because of the way it's wired. It's hardwired into the chassis. So I would say, you know, so I have I've built in this case, which is fairly new. I've built in the snowblind element, which is fairly new. I've built in what is this thing called? Of course, now I can't find the box. Oh yeah, the Deep Cool Matrix 55 version 3, which is fairly new. That's actually a really good case. I should do a video about that build. But it comes with no fans, right? You have to buy your own fan kit for that. So it's not exactly an apples to apples. That's an easy case to build in too, or it's on the easy side to build in. But I would say that, you know, even though I can't show you the top-down view of putting a motherboard into this chassis, I would just say that it's not that bad, right? It is actually pretty stinking easy to get a motherboard and all the componentry and hookups connected without feeling like you're just either going to break something, which I felt on several instances, in several different cases, just like, man, I'm going to wind up like snapping something, or, you know, bending a pin or something, because everything is just so tight in here. Let me turn this other light on, get a little bit more light on what I got going on here. I don't know if that didn't blare me out too much. This is actually a good time. Let me check the stream, see if anybody's commented, and see what you got going on out there. Let's see. Mishka Town says, it's a lovely case. I own the white one too. Only regret is they releasing a mesh front panel version soon. So I wouldn't say that's a regret. The only thing you're going to get with the mesh front panel is you're going to get better airflow with stock fans. I have half a dozen 200 or 140 mil fans on the floor over here that I'm going to install in both of these cases to do some like comparisons. I got those off of Craigslist for like $15, right? Fans are cheap. You can find fans. You don't have to go spend crazy money on Noctua case fans, right? You can get fans that will have adequate airflow. This case has decent airflow. It does need more fans than what it ships with, but you can up the airflow and not significantly degrade your noise floor pretty easily with this case. Luke Besher says the white DG77 looks good for a white case too, but he prefers this one. Same, I prefer this one too, the DG77 as well. Have you seen the white NZXT boards? Haha, yes I have. So my son's Snowblind Element has an NZXT N7370, but they don't NZXT doesn't make a white AMD board, so that's the reason I had to go with the Mortar Titaniums. And then they're going back and forth to each other. And then on Facebook, I got Rich. I'm going to wave at Rich Colwell if I can. I don't know. My mount's kind of janky here. Yeah, I waved at Rich. And somebody else is watching who looks like they have a Laotian or Cambodian name. I don't know. If you're out there, hello. Okay. So, it's always a good idea to attach as many of the I/O panel cables as possible before you button down the motherboard, right? As well as the 8-pin ATX power cable. That's just me. That's just the way I like to do things. If you like to do things differently, that's okay. I like the Bob Ross of computer building over here. You know, happy little motherboard sitting right over here. But this is the way I like to do it. I like to get the ATX cable threaded through, and I like to get the what they call the J panel threaded through. Open that up. Oh, I lost the ATX. That's okay. It'll go right back in there. So I'm going to get the J panel threaded through, and I'm going to get the HD audio threaded through. And you'll notice that it's constantly a bundle of snakes back here. You're constantly fighting tangles. You're constantly fighting, especially if you want to keep a really good aesthetic on this front panel on the interior. And then this motherboard has its USB 3.0 on the bottom right, just past that. So the USB 3.0 will go in through this bottom connector here, and that's going to be fine. I can do that after I get it mounted. Okay. To the side here. Okay, so these will all be covered up by those great shrouds, right? So we got those two through. These are the hardest ones to get attached before or when the motherboard's not or already installed, right? So we're gonna slide that back through there, and you'll notice it looks like I need 6 hands to get this done, but a little bit of practice and you'll be okay. The biggest thing is to just not get frustrated, right? Their wires, they're gonna behave poorly, and that's okay. Just find a place that you can tuck them so they stay as best as you can out of your way. So we're going to take a motherboard here. It's going to mount in there like this. I kind of like to hold it here a little bit in space and get the cables lined up here. slot together. That is also another nice feature about these white cable extensions. They have an interlock mechanism built into them, so they do eventually lock together there. Gonna need to spin it so that they line up with the power outlet, power inlet on the motherboard. Slide these out of the way here so we don't mar our finish. And then, okay, so got the ATX power in, and then we're gonna do the HD audio. HD audio is almost always the connector. If you're looking at it from this orientation with your back I/O panel coming towards where it's going to come out of the back of the PC, the HDMI audio is almost always the bottom left jumper or pin panel, pin port. Slides down in there, and then with the J panel or the power panel, and this one is set up to be I have my battery on my overhead lights going out here. This one is set up to be J. Front panel 1 is top or bottom right, all the way to the right. I'm losing battery on the overhead light. That's a shame. I guess I should have made sure that was all the way recharged. It's a rechargeable, very nice rechargeable panel light. But the other nice thing, or the other thing to remember is, these J panels, your front panel I/O connectors, they usually come all kind of spliced together or adhered together, but they will string apart pretty easily. So this one only has power LED, power switch, and power reset, which that's pretty nice. So power switch is always on those two, and power reset is always right below it. And power LED positive is usually on that side at the top. Okay. So these are the connectors that will make you question your life choices, but thankfully I built a lot of computers and that was not that bad for me. So the thing I should have done before I got this in here, though, was to make sure that the standoffs are all in the right place. That's a thing. You can have standoffs in the wrong place, and this one does have standoffs in the wrong place, but that's okay. I've got plenty of room, and I kind of know what I'm doing. So I need to move 2 standoffs because this is a micro ATX board and not an ATX board, and it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. But what this also reminded me that I need to do is to install my motherboard backplate, which I've misplaced. I swore I had it down here with the power supply cables. Oh, here we go. Motherboard backplate. So this is something that you will definitely be mad at yourself, as I have been a couple of times, if you get a motherboard completely wired and installed, and then look at the back of the computer and see that you did not put your I/O shield on there. This is not a end of the world scenario. My son ran his crap potato computer for years. Maybe if I turn this thing slightly down there, with no rear I/O shield to speak of. It did get a considerable amount of dust. That's probably the biggest thing, is depending on the way your case fans are set up, you can have some dust buildup if you don't have one of these installed. So we're going to pop this bad boy in. There it is. Too easy. And then we're going to move a motherboard standoff. So the standoffs are in the chassis pre-installed for this chassis. They're in the chassis pre-installed for an ATX size motherboard, and that's okay. This is an ATX sized case, so I would assume, or I would expect that to be the case. You know, they're but they have the holes drilled for you to install the standoff or move the standoff into the micro ATX configuration, which is what we have with our motherboard. So that's too easy to fix. So I got to move one standoff on the far left side of the motherboard and one standoff on the far right side of the motherboard, and we'll be golden. So that's one standoff in place, and what does that give me here? It gives me two. Yep, just one more to move. Just one more. So we'll take this guy out of here, on the bottom. Basically just the bottom standoffs we gotta move. Bottom two for the micro ATX board. So you do want to be careful, right? You are moving what is fairly cheap. I call it steel. It's metal. I'm not sure what kind of alloy it is, right? And so you have a steel chassis and steel screws. They are fairly finely threaded, and they are fairly fragile. So what you don't want to do is force it. I definitely recommend you take your time, make sure that you have your screws lined up. I usually back thread mine. I turn them backwards until I hear like a little tink to tell me that the thread has found the opposing thread in the hole, and then I start to screw it forward so that it will actually catch in the threads. My good friend Jason Crawford's on. I learned that alongside him working on Datsun 280Z. That was an experience that taught me several life skills, one of which is trying to make sure that threads don't get crossed. And he probably learned the same invaluable lesson working alongside my crap Ford Contour. God rest its soul. It's gone. Been gone for 15 years almost. Okay. So, the Snowblind case comes with motherboard standoffs and screws that are not standard. So that was my first time. I've built in a bunch of cheap cases, right? I've built in Rosewood cases. I've built in Zalman cases. I built in Cooler Master cases that were on the low end. I've built in a half, in the Cooler Master, I think it's a half 922. And I've done a bunch of old school cases like Alienware, Area 51s, and Dell XPS 700 series. And I have never come across that NZXT or that iBuyPower Snowblind was the first one I came across where the pan head screw, the large flat head screw, was not the screw that you used on the motherboard standoff. That was infuriating. I couldn't figure out why the motherboard screws were not screwed into the standoff, and evidently they used a screw that is very, very, very similar to what most cases include for your hard drives. They include screws that look like that. They are almost indistinguishable from the hard drive cage screws that are for use to secure the motherboard, and they screw into the motherboard standoffs. So thankfully, I believe, yes, the Lian Li has not lost their minds like CyberPower have, and they use what is typically the universal standard panhead screw for motherboard attachment. There they go. They're going in there nice and tidy. All right, so I pre-installed on this motherboard the CPU and the RAM and the cooler. AMD's cooling solution, attachment points and everything are about as easy as you can get. They do feel a little bit like you're going to break something when you're trying to get that lever point down, but not when you're installing the CPU, but when you're installing the CPU cooler, you do sometimes feel a little heart flutter going on there when you're trying to get that lever on the opposite side to seat. But I've already got all of that installed, so there's no need to go through. Now that I have the motherboard installed, that also took care of the RAM installation and the CPU and CPU cooling solution installation. And I have my front panel control hooked in, and I have my 8 pin power to the CPU, the CPU power connected also. And just about done with the motherboard screws here. Okay, one more motherboard screw and she's in. Now, unfortunately, this 8-pin power cord is a little bit in the way, so I'm going to pull it down out of the way here. Okay, there we go. And snake this last motherboard screw in. Wait till I hear the back thread. There it goes. Okay. All right. So there we have the motherboard all installed there. It sounds kind of janky. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, that top screw there didn't seat all the way. That's why. I thought I heard a little bit of a rattle going on. Oh, it fell down to the bottom. Let me get a new one in there. There it goes. Now we're in. Now to chase down that rogue screw that fell down here. If you don't have one screw fall down into some crevice, can you really say you built a PC? I mean, honestly. Got it. All right. So there it is. We got the motherboard in. That's basically, the brain of the system there. RAM's already been installed, 16 gigabyte of Crucial Ballistics, 3000 megahertz. Take that back. It's what is it? Bill, tell them what they've won. This is a Crucial Ballistics gaming, 3000 megahertz kit there. So that's good. And I think the Intel systems it's got fancy RGB lights on it, and on its RAM, and I think it does have 3200 megahertz RAM. Tell me in the comments if you think that's an unfair advantage. I mean, the little Intel's 4 cores, 4 threads, right? And this guy's working with 6 cores, 12 threads. Give the little Intel guy just a fighting chance, right? Okay, So we got cable management going on for the or cables run for all of the motherboard I/O except for the USB 3.0. The USB 3.0 no is what I call this thing. I hate this cable. It just it's big, it's chunky, it never goes where you want it to go in the manner you want it to go there. But thankfully, MSI put this, the PC God smiled on me. I usually wind up with this cable being, so there's a cross support right here. I usually wind up with this port being directly over this this port here being directly over this cross support, and having to do some just like crazy chicanery with the USB 3.0, but it goes in fairly easily here on this one, so that's nice. I do wish that actually, I think we could find a better route for this HD audio. If we take this HD audio from the side and we route it from behind here and plug her in there, and then tuck this bad boy up behind the motherboard. Look at that. That's pretty clean. So, pro tip, if you're a builder, Zots, right? Glue dots. These things are awesome. So what I'll do now, since I'm fairly confident I'm not going to have to take that HD audio cable out, is I will take a glue dot off of my packet here, a couple of them, and I will make sure that that HD audio cable stays put. Stick this bad boy on the back side of this audio cable here, and then smack it up against there like that. So I'm going to need to do that a couple more times, and I'll finish that up after the stream. But that's just a little insider there. You can use these glue dots to do cable management. Only do it on non-essential things like the HDMI, the power supply cord. If you want that out of the way, or not the power supply, but the front I/O panel. If you want that out of the way and stuff like that. Don't do that for your 24-pin connector or anything like that, because A, they're not strong enough to hold, and B, it's just not good to put a lot of strain on these larger cables if you can avoid it. Right. So speaking of 24-pin connector coming through here, make sure it's oriented the right way. Again, we're using our cable extension. Had it oriented the right way the first time, but practice makes perfect. There we go. Slide that all the way through, bend that back, and actually, I think it'll be a prettier bend if we bring it out this way. There we go. Yep, just like that. And then once the back panel, the cable shroud management panel is on, it will kind of keep this in place, and it won't let this sag down quite as much, and it'll make that a little bit more, pretty. So we're going to plug in our system fans. The CPU fan's already plugged in because like I said, I already pre-installed this cooling solution and everything before we started the stream here. So this back fan, we're going to put on this fan 1, and then I'm going to run this top fan cable up through the channel for the ATX power supply. Looks like my overhead light is about to go kaput, and I do not have any more juice for this bad boy. Let's turn him off. That's a shame. Kind of doing this in the dark now. And then we're going to route it through. There's another little access port right over here. Wrap that around there, and also take the exhaust fan excess and route it back through the ATX power supply port. It's another little trick for you guys if you're going to build your own system. If you really want a nice, clean cable management, take advantage of every little nook and crevice to push cables back behind the motherboard. And then, so the problem here is, right, I have 3 system fans and I only have 2 system fan headers. As far as, oh no, there is a system fan 3. The plot thickens. So let me take this down here. So I'm fairly positive that my my Intel system did not have a 3rd system fan header for case fans, but this AMD B450 does have a 3rd header. The problem is I'm going to need to, ooh, does that fit? Oh, that's tight. That barely makes it there, but I don't know. That's not the cleanest install of that, but it's better than bad. I might go back and revisit this. Might uninstall the motherboard actually and run this to come out behind the under the motherboard tray, and then slide that back in. You know, the live stream. I wasn't aware that this motherboard had 3 system fan headers. I'm fairly confident. I'm going to go back and look at that Intel board now and see if it had 3 system fan headers, and maybe do some rewiring on it too. And then the last front fan, I'm going to run it. Let's see, where can I? So I always try to push this guy, you know, in through any kind of crevice in the front panel. So there's a likely hole here, and I'm going to run it under the I/O cabling, and then our other system fan is up here at the top. So he's going to just sneak in here and plug in there, and boom, gives you a nice, clean, cable managed look there. Doing pretty good on the cable management right now. So last 2 things, I'm going to flip it around so you guys can see the back side of the computer here. So last couple of things, we're going to install the GPU and the hard drive, and also run system power. You can see it's a bundle of snakes back here, right? And you're going to be amazed at how clean this looks once we get those cable management channel panels on here. It's going to look slick as a whistle. And we're also going to use these cable management ties here also to kind of keep everything in check. So we got our 240 gig SSD. This is just our boot drive. And the way this goes into these, I'm going to mount it here. It's the exact same way I have it mounted on the Intel system. Is you take these 4. I'm going to come back around. I feel like I got my back to the camera here. You take these 4. Take 4 of these grommets that come in the packet. Ooh, they're bouncing around all over the place. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you find these kind of screws that have this like long neck. The grommet seats over that neck, and then you can just screw that into the body of the SSD like this, and it kind of creates like a little foot on the SSD body that will socket into these little cutouts on the SSD tray. So let me get these in here. How long have I been live for? Can't see on my YouTube stream. Let's see. I see Jason's commented. Let me see. I'm going to take a break here in just a second from the tedium of mounting SSD screws and talk to you guys for a second. Okay. What do we got going on the stream? Let's see. Jason, hey buddy, what's up? This may sound stupid, but can you put a filter media in the case to keep too much dust out of the vent holes? Yes. I'm looking at this thing and can only imagine the amount of dust that would get into it. Yes, it comes with, I will show you the filter vents here in just a second. Jason, I also learned to have a fire extinguisher in a Datsun at all times. Too true, my friends. Too true. Mishka Town says, at Mike, I will say I used ATX motherboard in my case. That USB 3.0 cable is tight. Yes, yes. So if you are an ATX user in a modern ATX case, your cable management opportunities at the down here at the bottom of the chassis are, they're spicy. That's the way I would describe them. You're going to have some challenges down at the bottom of your case. I've run into it. One of the cases I really do like to build in is the Zalman S2. It's a cheap, if you can find it on sale, which I have on numerous occasions, in order to resell, kind of budget computers locally. It's a very solid case that has good qualities, good airflow, but man, the bottom of the motherboard, if you're using a full ATX in that build, the bottom of the motherboard just sits so freaking close to the top of the power supply shroud. It is really challenging to get clean. Sorry, I'm preoccupied trying to get this damn thing to slide in here. It's really challenging to get clean cable management. I mean, I do it. I figured it out, but it took. It's kind of like the Grinch sitting there puzzling and puzzling and puzzling. Okay, so we got our SSD installed there. Gonna run some power to that one. I'm going to use the last power connection, and I'm going to tell you why here in a second. Maybe. Okay. Before I tell you why, let me talk to Jason here real fast about the filtration, right? So this is the front panel of the, and maybe Jason, you missed the beginning of the stream. So this is the front panel of the case, and it just pops on and off. It's got plastic retention screws, and it carries electricity to the front. There's RGB lights inside of it, embedded inside of it through this little contact panel here. But you can see this is the main air intake channels for the front of the case, and they have they're taped in here, removable mesh screens here that you can, so to take this one out, you'll need to take the tape off and pop this little connector off, and then this screen will pop out, and it'll have no electronics in it whatsoever, and you can just take it over to your faucet and wash the dust off of it. So two removable mesh screens in the front, that sits up here on the front of the chassis, and then on the back side, or the top side of the chassis, you have this large magnetic mesh filter that sits over this this open cutout here that is for your top exhaust fans, however you want to have that configured. This will fit up to a 280 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, or if you want to do building a custom loop in this would be challenging but not impossible for water cooling, but it will hold up to a 280 millimeter radiator there, and that is the filter for that. This slots in there to filter the top portion, and then your power supply is sucking in air from the bottom underneath, and it has a I don't want to do it wrong here. It's kind of, I don't remember how this pops out. It has a removable filter screen. I don't want to break it. There it goes. It has a removable filter screen for the power supply also, right? And again, you just slide this out, take it over to the sink, wash it off, let it air dry, slide it back in, and you have filtration media for, I would say that is, you know, that's a 95% solution, I think. So not on this backside panel, but on the same panel as this, but on the front side, there is one very small strip of unfiltered intake. If you don't have, let me just turn it around so you guys can see what I'm talking about. If you don't have your power supply set as an exhaust fan, and you don't have a radiator or fans mounted here to pull air in from the outside and up into the chassis, this is a non-issue, right? There's going to be extremely minimal airflow coming through this. I don't know if you can if that even shows up. There's these grates right here. It's hard to see when the panel is in place, but when you open it up, these are cutouts here on this indentation of the panel. Air could be ingested through there, especially the way it comes set up stock, because this is pulling air. This fan up top is pulling air out of the chassis and up, and this fan on the back is pulling air out of the chassis and back. And this is the only fan that's actually drawing air or pushing air into the chamber inside. So because that is the case, you might get enough airflow through here to possibly get a little bit of dust build up, but I think it would be minimal. But I would not suggest you run this chassis in the stock configuration full time anyway. I would definitely suggest you go and buy, you know, a couple of 140 mil fans. So on the front, you can just mount 140 mil fan on the top and bottom above this 120 mil fan. So you have 140, 120, 140. You have 3 front fans, and that will provide ample positive case pressure. So the air is always being blown out, and the air that's coming in is always filtered through the front panel. And I think that would totally negate any kind of dust issue that this chassis could have. All right, we're on the home stretch here. Let's finish her up. Let's finish strong. The only component that I have, the only 2 components I have really left to install physical are the graphics card and those back wire management or cable management panels, right? So let's go ahead and get the graphics card in there. Again, this is all about figuring out, you know, which cable needs to be under which other cable and how to make them, you know, align the best you can. Oh, I remember on the other one. I didn't go through here. I went through the bottom. That's right. So interesting. This case actually winds up looking better if you send these PCIe power cables through the bottom. This would be considered like your power supply shroud area. There's a cutout here in the back of that. If you send them through here, it actually winds up looking, I feel like, a little bit better. The layout of this motherboard, even though it is the same brand and line as the other Intel system, is a little different. So it is kind of throwing me for a loop. I thought I was just going to have a pretty much a mirrored build in these two systems, but it's not working out to be exactly a one-to-one mirror, and that's probably just because, you know, AMD and Intel just have different specs for their components, and that's okay. So we got to take the PCIe lane or port covers out. I do like that, you know, that's another, this is like a, I would say this case is like somewhere between, you know, premium and mid-grade. It's better than mid-grade, but it's not quite premium. There are a couple of things they could have done. You know, they could have included the USB Type-C connector right off the bat. But one thing that does let you know that it's not a bottom grade or just a plain old mid-grade cable is that every PCIe back slot is removable and also reinstallable, meaning they don't have those cheap punch out where you have to like bend it back and forth and it snaps off, you know, to get to be able to install your graphics card. If you're going to change your configuration in this case, you keep these and you can reinstall them later, and you don't wind up having, you know, gaping holes in your back I/O. You know, and maybe to a lot of people no one cares, but you know, we're over here managing cables to the nth degree. We want everything to be as tight, like a toiga. I suppose I should have started this stream off with "Hey, all you cool cats and kittens," but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I went with the Austin Powers reference instead. Sue me. And then we're going to reinstall that. So here is our white GPU. Man, this thing looks good. I think it's a shame that I can't vertical mount this thing. It's not that I can't, it's just that I don't have the PCIe standoff to do it. That's okay. Maybe in another life I'll get a chance to do a vertical mount custom painted white GPU in a Lian Li Lancool II. Okay, that one's going home, and one more. Okay, so now all we have to do is get the cabling up here. Immediately falls out the bottom as soon as I open up the back tray. Okay, and this one. Said this does have a nice, they do snap together really nicely on that, and these cable extensions. It's a good decision. So there we go. So the only thing left to do is to pop a SATA cable on our hard drive, and then what I'm gonna do with my SATA cable. I had them out here just a second ago. Have another drink, Michael. That'll help. That totally helped. SATA cable. Aha. SATA cable into our SSD on the back here, and then I'm going to look for the best and most opportune route to put it up into the chassis. And it looks like I have two here on the top right, so, and they're front facing, which helps because I have a 90-degree angle SATA cable, and bam, barely even see that thing. Look at that. So that is, while that is not perfect, that is not my idea of perfection per se, it's pretty freaking good for a live stream that's taken, how many minutes has this shenanigans been going on here? OBS, tell me. OBS won't tell me. That's interesting. Yeah. YouTube live stream home doesn't tell me how long I've been streaming. Oh yeah, there it is, an hour and a half. So an hour and a half to build, you know, a pretty decently cable managed system in a nice case. I'm gonna go ahead and put the SATA connector in here for the front lights, the front I/O panel. And so now, really the only thing left to do, only couple last touch-ups left to do to get this cable mishmash I've got going on back here aligned and wrangled, and we're going to get after that here momentarily. Okay, got that there. So slide, oop, almost lost it. If I can get the cable tie, the Velcro cable tie to cooperate. Yes. All right, so that flattens that down considerably, right? And then I need, I'm just gonna tuck. So this last SATA connector is eventually going to tuck up in here and be connected to a 3.5-inch hard drive, 3 terabyte hard drive. I'm not going to install that right now, just for the sake of brevity, right? And the PCIe cables, or the, I'm sorry, yeah, the PCIe cables can all get tucked into the I'm gonna pop that SATA cable off just for now, and I can get rid of some excess power, 12-volt power and 24-pin power here in the back, inside the power supply shroud. Tuck that in there, and then I'm going to reattach my SATA cable there. Okay, now, last couple things we're going to do, we're going to get these cable management trays back on, and that's going to make it look pretty sweet back here. Okay, so this guy goes right here. close that up there. Ta-da! So that is complete, right? Well, basically complete. I'm going to put our glass side panels back on. And then we're going to install windows. And these look to be mirror images of each other. I don't think it matters which glass side panel goes on where. I guess we're about to find out. I guess we are about to find out if the glass side panels are keyed in some way to the front and back of this computer. And that looks pretty good. If they are keyed, I guess well. Nope, here it is. And now the AC's on, so I apologize, especially if you're on YouTube or Facebook. The AC seems to really affect my cell phone camera for some reason. And then the pièce de résistance is the front panel. Boom. One all white PC build. Right? Dun, 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 dun. One Lian Li computer built basically from scratch on a live stream in about an hour and 45 minutes or so. There was a lot of chicanery going around at the beginning of the feed. You know, my OBS or YouTube Creator Studio told me I was streaming, but I wasn't actually streaming. So, you know, that kind of threw me off the rails a little bit right at the beginning of the stream. Tough to recover from that. But I think I could have probably done this in less than an hour and a half had I not been talking to you guys. Not that I'm blaming anybody. If you're still with me, you know, I greatly appreciate that. If you're not, well, I totally understand that. I'm going to plug it in and just see if it boots into the BIOS, or see if it just powers on at all. Right? So 3, 2, 1, contact. Hey, there's lights. There's pretty lights. All the pretty lights you could ever want are right here on the Lian Li. Look at that thing. It's a really stunning case. I really do like the case. I wish I had a third. I wish I had a third case. I would build it and keep it as my own. Probably, maybe, probably. But they're rare as hen's teeth these days to try and get new eggs out of them. Yeah. So join me for probably a canned video where I'm going to go and I'm going to take my test suite hard drive, hook it up to this computer and that computer, and I'm going to run a million games on both of them and see how the Ryzen 5 1600 AF stacks up against Intel's i3 9100F in identical in-case, no test bench. This is real world. They're going to be in a case, fully built PCs. How do they stack up? You know, there are no sponsors for this video. I do greatly appreciate you, Jason. I see you stuck with me to the end, brother. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys all watching the stream, those who tuned in. If you would, do me the favor of sharing my YouTube channel with a friend that is a tech enthusiast, sharing my Facebook page, and most importantly, sharing my Discord with any of your friends who are tech enthusiasts, or even if they're not. Hopefully, you know, I'm even just slightly appealing to people who aren't tech enthusiasts. I'll try to make some content to bring them to the dark side, as it were. Thank you for joining me with this for this build. This is the Lian Li Lancool II, and I built it with a Ryzen 5 1600 AF, a custom painted by me Powercolor 5700 RX Radeon RX 5700 on an MSI mortar titanium B450 motherboard using an EVGA 500 watt BQ power supply. I'm going to power this down, and then I'm going to power down my stream, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Deuce.